Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you might be, and tuning into the podcast of Mike from Newlands, a very warm welcome. It's particularly good to be here today because I've missed the studio. I haven't been here for a while, so I'm delighted to be back. I'm delighted that Cape Conscious Media has given me this platform to talk about politics and to talk about the manifestos of different parties. And I've got a few things I'd like to say, but before I do that, let me not be rude, and let me first introduce my guest this morning on our show, and that is Suzette Littlewood. Now, Suzette is the Deputy Secretary General and was a caucus leader. Am I right, Suzette?
Yes, correct.
And warm welcome.
Thank you so much, and it's Suzette Little.
Suzette Little, my apologies. What did I say?
Littlewood.
I say, sorry, I've got Littlewood. Is that not correct?
No, sir.
Entirely my fault. I do apologize. From now on, we'll stick to Suzette.
Thank you.
Okay. Suzette, a very warm welcome to the show. And Suzette's going to be discussing our manifesto, ladies and gentlemen, and telling us a little bit about what the good party is all about. But before I talk to Suzette, I want to talk to you. Because there's things going on in our country that worry me enormously. And I was watching this morning on TV as our Speaker of Parliament was being hustled in and out of cars as she's about to be arrested and about to be charged with corruption, malfeasance, and heaven knows what else. And I looked at this long line of cars that was parked there. I could not really... what it took me back to was on Sunday, this week, I happened to be at a wine farm, having lunch on a celebratory event with family. And I looked up to see one black car arrive, and then another, and then another. I counted 9 vehicles, dear viewers, 9, that pitched up for this lunch at a wine farm. I thought, who on earth has 9 vehicles? Well, it turns out to be the gangster in thief, the deputy gangster in thief, Paul Mashatile, alights from one of the vehicles and comes strolling into the restaurant, makes himself comfortable with his entourage. Well, I don't know, I counted 15, at least 16, maybe 17 security guards hanging around. And then he sat down to enjoy his lunch. Well, I didn't enjoy my lunch because it actually just ruined my lunch. Because I thought there he's having a plate of food for 240 Rand, and that lunch must have cost me, the taxpayer, something in the region of 10, 15, 20,000. Who knows? Why does he have to have 9 vehicles to have a plate of food for 240 Rand? Why must he drive to this venue past Khayelitsha, Langa, Gugulethu, with all these shacks, all this unemployment? Does he not look out of his window and get depressed? Clearly not. And I was warned by one of my guests to stop giving him dirty looks, because this is the same man. This is the same gangster that had 6 of his bodyguards get out of one of his cars and beat up 3 young men on their way to an army recruitment center in Johannesburg not long ago. This is what we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. We're dealing with gangsters. And the ANC is long past, as I've said on the show before, is long past being called a political party. It might have started off as one. In fact, when I supported it, it was one. But now it is a gangster syndicate, and we need to treat it as such. So, ladies and gentlemen, my lunch being suitably ruined, I went back home, and ironically enough, as I'm sitting at the traffic lights, would you believe, we left early than he did and his entourage, the next thing he comes flying past all 9 vehicles, in between, in and out the traffic, blue lights flashing, racing through Rhodes Avenue up towards Hout Bay. And where is he going? Well, he's going to his new mansion in Constantia, which I understand costs 34 million Rand or something. Not to mention that the fact he's got a mansion in Waterval, which costs another 27 million Rand. I did a rough calculation on my head. His bond repayments on those 2 houses must be in the region of about 740,000 Rand. Now, I want to ask you something. How does a man on a salary of 200,000 Rand pay off bonds of 740? Well, of course he doesn't, because he's corrupt. He's a gangster. He's a gangster like our president, and he's a gangster like the entire ANC. They are nothing more than gangsters. And the only thing I can say in their favor is they're not hiding it anymore. Our president doesn't bother to get embarrassed about the fact he hides US dollars, not even rands, the unpatriotic man, dollars in his couch because he doesn't trust his own currency. We have a deputy minister who's engulfed in corruption, and now just on today we're watching TV and we find the speaker, the third most important position in the country, being dragged before the courts, by the way, only because it suits her. And I want to lead to two things before I get on to chatting to the good party, because it's very relevant. So we have a gangster organization, and out of that gangsters, what do? They need to control. They need to manage. So we have a gangster that might manage an area or a suburb, but here we've got a political party that manages the country. Now, how do they do that? Well, one of the ways of doing that is to pay basic grants. The ANC is over the moon about the fact that the basic income grant has gone not from 14 million now to 15. I think it's close to 18 million. Suzette might be able to correct me there. And this is an achievement, according to the ANC. It's not an achievement, it's a disgrace. But the ANC see it as an achievement because it means they manage those people. And I will say this now, don't all get excited, everybody, about the fact that the ANC is going to lose big time in this upcoming election. I'm telling you right now, the ANC, like any gangster organization, doesn't mess around. And the rural area where that poor guy is sitting there with no hope, no food, no future, and certainly never going to have any work in his life, is going to go to the polls and he's going to put a cross on that and he's going to vote ANC, because he's going to be told, listen here, if you do not vote ANC, goodbye to your grant. And our president, by the way, has already reinforced that. And the second thing that they do is they bring in a minimum wage. It means that I could not start a business, which I wanted to do some time ago, making wicker baskets, because the union shut me down. They were not interested in the fact that the 5 people that wanted to work for me were prepared to work for nothing, because they would do it from home, we would build a business up, and then we would eventually start making wicker baskets, which, by the way, we import from China. No, this was unacceptable. They said to me, we will shut you down. So those 5 people, like thousands of others, sit there without work. So that's where we are in this country today. We're run by gangsters, a gangster party that makes no bones about what it's about. And in a sense, I'm grateful for that. And also aware of the fact that when the election comes around, that we're not going to see the ANC take a hiding or a beating that it should do. The ANC will do whatever it can to keep the rural vote, and yes, they might take a hammering in the metros, but I'm going to suggest right now that you're going to be very disappointed on the 29th of May with the outcome, because there's very little we can do until we start treating the ANC what it is, a gangster party. How are we going to fix that? I'm actually not sure. But that's what we're dealing with in this country. And unfortunately, we have a situation arisen now where we almost maybe gone too far down the road. The fact that our deputy gangster-in-chief can enjoy a meal costing us 15,000, 25,000 rand, get into an entourage of 9 vehicles worth, 9 million, pick a figure, pick a number, and then drive through Khayelitsha, Langa, Gugulethu, without even a moment conscious. It clearly just doesn't bother him at all. He's not at all ashamed by what he sees. And that's a problem. But that's a problem. But unfortunately, if we live in a gangster state, in fact, I think there's a book about it, that's what we have to deal with. But on the upside, some good news. I have the good party. And the good party has joined me in the studio, and I want to say, Suzette, thanks very much for coming along. It's really much appreciated. I'm going to say, I want to just thank you as well, because it's not always that easy getting parties to come on board. It's funny, isn't it? You'd think a party would want to have as much exposure as possible, especially before election, but many of them are not that keen, which makes me wonder just how confident they are about their policies. Leaders on top of the list is the ANC. They won't forget about them. But you are here, and you're here because you believe in what the good party stands for, and I welcome that, and I thank you for coming along to the studio. And I want to start off with your, by the way, also just a little bit off script, a great website. I would urge anybody, yeah, no, it's good. It's smooth, it's easy to find, it opens nicely. I mean, I've become a little bit of an expert, and I do say, oh, this is, and yours is a pleasure. It's nicely laid out, pictures are quality, click and it's there. So well done for your website. I was really impressed with it. And on the website, right in the front on the beginning page, is the good deal. Now, this is the basic income grant, and you have come up with an idea to change that. You feel quite rightly that this pathetic 370 Rand, I think it is.
350 at the moment.
Is it 350?
Yeah.
Is it
I
not
think
going
they increased it by 20.
They increased it by 20, yeah. So I think it's 370. Excuse me, whether that increase has come in or not, I'm not sure, but whatever. It really is not enough. That we know. And the Good Party has come up with a plan to increase that to 999 Rand.
Correct.
And my first question is, why? What happened to the other Rand? Was it just a number that you...
It's an easy number.
It's an easy number, okay. Where's the money going to come from?
Mike, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I listened to your introduction, and please allow me a few minutes. And yes, that exactly is what's happening in our country with our ministers. But I would like you to take a moment. There is another minister who serves in an opposition position, who is Patricia de Lille. And if you invite her or goes to lunch, you'll find one very used Land Rover with a driver and a security that sits with her in her car. No fanfare, no blue lights, no everything else that you've described. And that is what we're talking about. And I needed to bring that to your attention, because that is what we as Good Party are saying. The amount of money wasted, and it's not 10,000 that was spent that afternoon. It was a lot more. It probably ran into millions. That lunch of 200 Rand ran into millions. And as the Good Party, we are saying it's that waste that is spent on public reps that is there to serve the people, that can be used to uplift our communities. It is that irresponsibility, and that's one aspect of government. It's the bolstering themselves, putting themselves in a position where they are the ones that benefit from government. The people are supposed to be benefiting from government. That is why you're there. And when we looked at this 999, the 999, the grant, sorry, I must use my hands. It is as a result of looking at and restructuring government. Now, when you talk about restructuring, or when we talk about restructuring, everybody kind of loses their mind and says, how are we going to do it? Simple. If Patricia can get into a second-hand vehicle, I don't think it's a new car. If it is, please don't shoot me. But this is a car that she has. She's got a driver and she's got a bodyguard. Why are the other ministers not using that? Why are we not saving that money? That is where we're getting this money from. We are saying there is enough money in this country. South Africa is not a poor country.
I would go so far as to say, actually, you're not asking for enough. I think you could easily double that. I think you could get 2,000 Rand. If you look at the fact that our speaker is being charged with 2.4 million Rand. Now, I don't believe that. There is no way one of the gangsters in the ANC that high only steals 2.4 million. I am sorry. 20 million, I believe. In fact, I remember Gordon actually said to then Minister Brown, he actually said, so I see the ANC doesn't steal in millions, it steals in billions. Now this is Pravin Gordhan, a minister himself. So we can, I think, safely say, Suzette,
clearly
double that.
So let's stick to what we've got in our manifesto. Because what we like to do is what we are recommending, we must implement. This is not a story. This is an implementable plan that can be done when we govern. Not if, when we govern. And the monies are coming from the restructuring investments, the way we manage money, the way we manage government, the way we manage the implementation of programs is where this money is going to come from. The impact that it's going to have in our communities is overwhelming. We've tested this. We've looked at what can we do with 1,000 Rand. Now we've got examples of where people took the 1,000 Rand, went out and went to go and buy socks. and started selling that. They contacted the party and said, well, do we give the 1,000 rand back? Once we saw what people were doing, we said, no, but we're not going to take that 1,000 rand back, continue with the business. Now somebody's starting a business out of that money where they can at least sustain themselves a little bit more than what they had previously. That is what is failing in this country. We are not focused on uplifting our poor. And many people don't want the handout. They need help.
I love what you're saying. Can I just interrupt you on that point? They don't want the handouts. I absolutely agree with that. And as I said to you earlier in my introduction, unfortunately, because we're run by gangsters, they've created this situation where people are reliant, they're dependent, they've almost become unwilling parasites on the taxpayer. Those that work, you, me, Nantal here, all pay tax. They've become unwilling parasites on our tax money because they have had the opportunity, or any opportunity to work has been taken away from them. So you're absolutely right about that. But I want to take it a step further. What I'm concerned about, and it's not a concern really, but where I don't see your manifesto goes deep enough, is that we're talking about a pie here that really hasn't moved. In fact, we're less than 1% growth. And what I would like to have seen from the Good Party is how are we going to grow this pie? Because we are now fighting on an ever-diminishing amount of money. I don't doubt for a second, probably a third of that pie is stolen on an almost weekly basis by the ANC. I mean, there's no doubt. In fact, if not half the pie is stolen, wasted expenditure, whatever you want to call it. So as a country, just with our economy limping along at 1%, I believe we should never be and have the poverty that we have. We had 197 children actually died of starvation in the Eastern Cape. Yeah. I mean, we lose 200 black children every month to starvation around the country. It's just unforgivable. But the ANC doesn't give a damn about that. They're not in the business of looking after us. They're in the business of enriching themselves. But now we need to look at a way of increasing the size of that pie. And to my mind, the only way we're going to do that is to get overseas investment. And I want to know, how's the Good Party going to encourage an investor into South Africa when he's got to put up with expropriation without compensation, economic equity or equity employment, the unions that do not make life easy for businesses to come in here, a minimum wage, and now this crazy new law that's come in that you only allowed so many Indians, so many coloureds, and so many blacks. Can you believe it? We're back to apartheid. How are we going to get a company to come in and invest into this country? How's Good going to overcome that?
Mike, that's a very good question. And it's a very deep question. But you must not forget, we have at some point, the executive of Good, have at some point governed in a capacity where we've done just that. Increased investment, used the resources at our disposal to eradicate poverty to a certain extent. Poverty, or the alleviation of poverty, is not a one aspect or one type of solution. It is a political will to deal with everything. One, we're going to need the investment to encourage, we're going to need the overseas investment to encourage the unemployment. We're going to have to look at our own resources within this country to assist with the unemployment. We must use the finances that is at our disposal at the moment to eradicate poverty. But we're not doing that. There's no political will. And let me give you an example why. Because it comes down to nuts and bolts. It really is about the nuts and bolts. We have a city across the country. Each province has got their own metro. I think there's only one province without a metro. But each metro gets a few billion rand. That metro is responsible for a few things. It is responsible for social upliftment. It's responsible for safety, maintenance, and development. Each municipality, that is your core function, that's your basis, that's your objective. So it doesn't matter where you govern, that's your objective. But each city has the responsibility to grow the base. So how do you use your funds? Now let me take an example, because this is what we did. This was the focus of why EPWP became such a strong tool that was used in Cape Town by Patricia at the time. We've got 116 wards. Each ward must be kept clean. Each ward must have certain things done to it. There's got to be drain cleaning, street sweeping, litter picking, grass cutting, you name it, it's got to be done. Each ward is supposed to have its own maintenance plan for that period of for the 12 months. And what we did at the time was create community vendors. They've never ever implemented it. You don't find community vendors in our communities at the moment to do the maintenance and the cleaning. They do bulk tendering. That is how you alleviate the poverty. You ensure that the people on the ground creates their companies so that the city can work, or the municipalities, or the province, or the national government works with the companies that's created. Now, once you've done that, you have a person that you can teach into business. He's going to be employing people within that community to assist him to clean whatever maintenance. That's one basic side of creating an environment of creating jobs. The investment, when you see that the investor outside of the country starts seeing the places are kept clean, the infrastructure is working, we've got lights that are burning, which we currently don't have, and we see certain things happening, you will automatically get the investment coming into your city. That is what attracted them to the city of Cape Town. Patricia started the infrastructure development in places like Heideveld and Gugulethu. It stopped. The minute we left, it stopped. We don't see the upgrading of the Cape Flats where infrastructure has got to be dealt with. At the moment, we're sitting with a sewage problem. Investors don't want to come to a place where sewage is now being blocked up, all the lights are out because he cannot maintain. What did Patricia do at the time, or what did the good party? Let me rather say Patricia, not knowing she would be good at the time. But because it was a concern at the time, because our lights were going out, she said, let's challenge the minister to produce our own energy. That never happened. We're being charged at the moment, but it's never happened.
No. Listen, Suzette, I agree with you, and I'm nodding my head all the time because what you say makes so much sense. And yeah, it will never happen. But I still want to understand, and because it's a bit like, as you say, if we haven't got sewage, who's going to come over from overseas and build a factory? I mean, we need to put the basic facilities in place.
Yes.
We need to have the infrastructure so that if the factory is going to produce a widget, that we can get the widget out the factory, down the road without potholes, to the harbour where the ships are going to leave and depart on time. And what that means, the eradication of cadres all the way down the line. Because we are where we are today, because it's cadres that ran the Transnet into the ground. It's cadres that destroyed our harbours. It's cadres that destroy, in fact, every single SOE in this country is bankrupt. Everyone. No, I'm not surprised our president in Thief doesn't want to release the names from his committee when he was there for a year, or was it 10 years, in the cadre committee, which the DA have just won the case, where they must produce the names and the minutes of those meetings. Because you will find in those minutes of those meetings, people that were totally incompetent and useless were put into these high-powered jobs where they had not a clue what they were doing. I remember actually not long ago, well, actually it was a long time ago, it was in 1995, a gentleman I can't remember, but he was the big cheese at Eskom. Eskom had just won the award in New York for being the best run, most profitable, privately owned power producer in the world. And this guy said, listen, I have no problem with transformation. I have no problem with in the new South Africa. But to transform too quickly would be, and these were his words, catastrophic. I remember that like yesterday. And that's where we are. Everything is now catastrophic. And we need to get back to understanding how we're going to correct that. Because, as you say, we need the sewerage, but we need to look at a way of getting, we need to see the bigger picture. And I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing how on earth are we going to dig ourselves out of this mess. We can chase a few things around here and get little jobs going, but it's the bigger picture, Suzette, that I'm worried about. How are we going to get Mittal Steel just announced the other day they've 20% down on their steel sales in South Africa. Why is that? Because our industry is collapsing. We're less than 1% growth. We have a much bigger problem, I believe, than getting vendors employed. Not that it's not important, not at all, but we have a much bigger problem in that, and nobody seems to be addressing that particular problem.
Okay, Mike, let me say this to you. You were talking about how do we eradicate poverty, and you wanted to know the bread and butter issue on how do we eradicate poverty. I've given you an example of how to do that. It is a bigger picture, but it is that bread and butter issue because nobody's going to come into a country where you've got so many unemployed that gang and drugs and everything else is taking control because you've not addressed the 80% that is actually now causing the problem.
Correct.
And that is why I'm saying to you, as good, and I'm listening to you talking to us about cadre deployment. Cadre deployment is in every sphere of the ruling party, both nationally and provincially. So let's not talk about cadre deployment as if it's only happening in the ANC. It's practice everywhere. And I can give you examples of cadre deployment at another stage.
When you say practiced everywhere, you're talking about, what are you talking about? Other political parties?
Correct. And there's only two political parties at the moment that govern. One governs in a provincial capacity and in a city, and the other one nationally. And the tendency to deploy friends, families, and associates, that's a practice. So let's not go down the cadre deployment. We're not in the business of deploying cadres, and we're not in the business of corruption. So I agree with all of what you're saying. It has brought our country to the point where we at the collapse because the cadres that they deployed were certainly not capable and competent people that were able to take us forward. It's one thing to be deployed as a cadre, but if you've got no capacity to implement or do the job, it's theft. So we have that situation on both sides of the coin. What I'm asking you is, you're saying to us, what is this big picture? How are we going to do it? Well, you've got certain situations where the money in South Africa is there. It's available. We have situations where there is a willingness from those overseas to come to Cape Town or to come to South Africa because of our location, where we find ourselves, our resources. We are blessed with so many things that attract people to us. How we treat them, what we do, how do we make them comfortable, that's the important thing. How do I ensure that the investor coming to me is looked after, that is secure in such a way that he gives me more money so that I can help build my country? That must always be the focus. But we must also look at how do I use foreign investment to help me develop my own resource. It is pointless for us to continuously mine and produce and export these things, then to have to buy it back again. So we must start looking at how do we redevelop the economy within our country. And that is something that we've not looked at.
Can I ask you, where does the good party stand on expropriation without compensation? Because to my mind, you know, I mean, this is a personal issue, but I lost a big deal. I'm in property, and I lost a big deal because the company that would not invest here, because then it wasn't law, but it is now, the expropriation without compensation. How does the good party deal with that? Because I can bring you this company based in Switzerland, Geneva, a massive property development company. They will come here because, and strangely enough, because the chairman, or I hope he's still there, he was a black gentleman from Texas, but he loves South Africa and he loves the Western Cape. And but he can't come here because his investors will not allow their money to be invested in any country where property rights are not part of law and not protected by the government. How does a good party deal with that?
You know, we talk about expropriation without compensation. It's been part of the Constitution for a while. It has been. But we still have property rights. You cannot come to somebody and just expropriate his land at the whim and a fancy. You can't do that. It is not allowed because you do have property rights in this country. But how do we implement it? And that's a very good example, and I'm going to give you one where land was expropriated from the city for a family that was removed from Constantia. We have a shopping center there today, and that was a piece of open land that was a dump site, and it was expropriated and given to the family as a restitution. There are 5 other sites like that. We didn't go to the families and say, well, Mr. Solomons, where did you live before? And let me take that house now because that was yours. We found a suitable piece of land and we then had restitution. It is not about just taking people's lands. You can't do that. We have laws in this country. And I think it was very unfair that we didn't explain this to the investor. It is our responsibility to explain that to our investors.
But I did.
Well, somebody else should have then, somebody that could convince him to bring his investment over to us, because we need those investors. We need to secure our investors if they want to do that. But we must never forget that the land in South Africa is public land for public good. That is our belief. That the people in this country that has already lost out so much must be considered. Now, I'm not saying that suddenly I'm going to come and knock on your door, notice that you've got everything that I now desire, Mike, and I'm going to put in a claim for your house. It's not about that. It's about restoring where we find ourselves. Because we cannot go and perpetrate the same thing that was done to us and we claiming it was traumatic. It was.
It's apartheid revisited, isn't it?
It was. But that also means that on your side, you must understand that there was an evil done to us, and it is out of our culture, out of our understanding and forgiveness, that we do not rebel and do these things. So when we talk about expropriation, it's not about just, well, now because you've built a factory on it, we're now going to take your factory. No, it is of value to the people. He's creating jobs. He's creating opportunity. We must ensure, and this is where I keep on saying to you, as good, we must focus on the 20%. The 20% is important to us, because that is the 20% we must build with. And those are the 20% that we are going to use to actually build this country. I don't want my investors, and I don't want the people that is contributing to be left or leave or go somewhere else. I want them to see the value of the investment, because I'm a taxpayer. I want to see, what are you doing with my money? I don't want to see the 80% growing into more than 8. I want to see the reduction of the 80%. Part of that 80% must now become contributors as well. But at some point, I'm going to have to take my 20% with me to show them what it is that we can do with the investment. Right now, they're not. I am frustrated when I go into an area and all that we get is job seekers. I go into an area and people are standing on corners because people want to work.
And the irony is, I'm not allowed to employ them, and nor are you. I mean, but I want to just touch on 2 things. First of all, I just want to pick up something that's come through in fact, it was ENCA this morning, just talking about cadre deployment. I hear what you're saying about cadre deployment in the municipalities and in the DA, but I have to say, one reason why the DA stays here, it says here the good governance, I know this is not you guys, the good governance agency says the Western Cape is the best performing municipality. That's ENCA news this morning. So they might have cadres in these other political parties, but it would be unfair to say the DA or the Good Party or anybody else is anything like the ANC. I mean, at least we've got a municipality here that has been voted the best run municipality. So I think that, just to be fair, I'm scared that when we compare anything with the ANC is not a political party. It is a gangster syndicate. And then the other thing I just want to touch on quickly, because we really need to move on to a few other issues that I want to touch on, transport and crime quickly, and is that you mentioned about the land, and now I did study this quite carefully. Now, the company that was going to invest here, we're not talking small money here. They in fact, if you know Rob Hersoff, the land that he looked at, it was the same piece of land that I was trying to sell to this this company based in Switzerland, where all the meetings took place in Germany. He pointed out, and it is now law, that if the government decides that they want to now take, it doesn't have to be a farm, by the way, it can be a car, your house, your whatever it is, all they do is they produce a letter from the municipality, they deliver it to you, and you get this letter. You've then got 7 days to vacate your premises. That's all they have to do. There is no more land protection in this country. And they might or might not compensate you, but you've got no recourse to law. That's where we are in the situation. That is the law that has just been passed. It is the same law that now says that if you're in Mpumalanga and you want to have 10 Indians, but proportionately there's only so many Indians in the entire population of Mpumalanga, then you are therefore only allowed the equivalent number of Indians in your business. It's the same madness that's happening there. So it is a real problem, and I don't think anybody's spending enough time on it. And I'm just talking about the good party because I can't get any party to give me a decent answer. How are we going to deal with this? But I want to move on. Sorry, I see, first of all, we've got part 2 question. Why did you and Patricia leave the TA? From Roscoe Palm. And then the second part, National Coloured Congress says they busted the DA's corruption. Are you afraid that the NCC take goods place? NCC, is that the National Congress? Congress. Sorry, can I just look at that again? So why did you and Patricia leave the DA? Is that why? I didn't even know. That's right. Okay, I knew you were at the DA, of course. Yeah, but
no,
do you want to answer that? But you've got to keep it short. I've got so many other things I want to deal with. You left because you got a better deal? Or?
No, Mike, you can't answer for me.
I can't, no. But I want to deal with other issues.
No, you can deal with other issues. Yeah. Why did I leave and why did Patricia leave? I left simply because it was racist. And it was racist on the base that the manner in which we were dealt with, the development that was allocated for those living on the Cape Flats and those that were living on the other side of the M5 was certainly different. The services that was provided on the one side was not always on the other. The amount of money that was allocated, although it's the same well-run city, you would recall that Patricia got clean audits throughout. So it is well-run. But after 2016, after they gave Patricia carte blanche to actually develop and do the things that she needed to do, after that, when they got the 67%, they thought it was their vote. And then that was suddenly taken away. Social development, as you would know now, has been taken away. We've got so many other things that has been dealt with in a very different manner. Also, when I asked the DA, I asked Musi Mayamani, I asked James Self, I asked all of them, please provide me with the evidence that you have against Patricia Little. Nothing happened. In actual fact, they started charging me. I have 14 charges against me at the time of the DA, one of which was for praying. The other one was for driving in a VIP car, and the other one was for shredding agendas. Now, if you have and belong to a party that does that, then you've got a problem. My integrity was, I valued more, and I was not going to allow anybody to do that. The racism, unfortunately, is a real thing. When you ask and you want to deal with these issues, you get a very different response. It was at the time when I supported Patricia because they could not provide the evidence that they claimed they had. I supported Patricia and I voted in favor of Patricia staying. That, of course, placed the target on my back.
And the second question there is the National Coloured Congress says they busted the DA's corruption. Are you afraid that the NCC take goods place?
I don't know if they've busted the DA's corruption. I don't know if the case went to court yet. And if there was that? It was the issue of the staircase corruption that they had highlighted. I don't know if there was an outcome in terms of that. Are there problems within the DA? Yes, there are. Are there issues that's being investigated? Yes, there are. Is it being underplayed? Yes, it is. Because we have the narrative of a well-run city, as you've just mentioned. What makes it a well-run city? One has got to go and have a look. Part of reporting on time also forms part of that well-run city. Accounting for certain things in your audits. What people don't know, and I'd like to say this slowly so that the public is aware of the fact, when an audit is undertaken in a city, it is only 10% of a select item. In a city. The entire city is not audited as people understand audits. Only 10% of what is selected by the accounting officer and his executive team is then audited.
What does that mean? So
that means, great. I'm so glad you asked that question. So they would select certain issues, if it is the number of taps, if it's the number of drains, if it's the number of houses, if it is certain things. 10% of that would be audited, and if they do find a discrepancy, they would carry on further in that audit. But it is not an audit as you understand, where in a corporate we shut down at a certain date and we go through everything and we come out with it. No, it's not that.
Okay. All right. You have got another message here. Ingrid Simon says, well done, Suzette. Say your fan base. Thank you very much, Ingrid, for that message. It's much appreciated. I hope you're enjoying the show. I want to touch on transport. Time is moving on, and I know that we're going to get a signal from our producer, Nantel, just now. But I want to touch on transport, another big issue. Now, I took a ride on, as you know, I ride around on a motorcycle. And I went through Dunoon the other day to get down to the Kalani motor racing track. And I was shocked to see, although I had seen it before, but it's even worse now, that they burnt the station had burnt down there, from the Cape Town bus system, which is called whatever it is. That's burnt down. And then on my way back, I went through, I think it's Samora Michelle in where's Samora Michelle? In the Maitland area. They also...
near Phoenix.
Yeah, it's... God, I've got completely blank. But it's in Montague Gardens, basically.
Yes, correct.
Right. And that also burnt down. What is happening is... And then I also saw, to my horror, that the taxis are now using that bus route. Now, the cynic in me tells me that it suits those taxi drivers very nicely to have those two stations burnt down, because they have now got an easy ride on their taxis from one point to another when shifting people around. And I'm concerned that this might be the start of the breakdown of that whole system. We are now busy building another system, the similar system from, I think, Kailicha into Wynberg.
Yes.
Which is going to, I think, be fantastic, because it's another single lane, bus only, and it's going to run all the way through. It should be completed, I think, end of next year, as I remember, and that they're going to change the traffic. In Wynberg, it's going to be a two-way operation to accommodate this new system. But again, how is the good party going to deal with this? How are they going to protect our bus system? Because we've lost 40, 50 train sets, all suddenly went up in flames. Nobody's ever been arrested. That's not surprising, of course. But nobody's been arrested. No, I think they caught 2 people once. But we've lost 40 or 50 train sets. That's an entire train and carriages gone. Our bus system comes under attack all the time. I don't know how many buses Arrow Bus have lost. I've given up trying to count. What's good going to do to get our transport back on track and, quite frankly, keep these taxi drivers at bay? Because that, I believe, is where it all starts and finishes. Nobody else goes around burning buses and trains except somebody who has an interest in the transport system, and that can only be the taxi industry.
You know, Mike, the only way I can answer you is this. You end up with something that you don't want when you don't either include it or negotiate with it. And you end up with having to now be forced into a situation you don't want to be in. And that's where we find ourselves. We find ourselves with a system or an organization or organizations that themselves are being hijacked. Because there are also those that do not belong to these associations that's also running amok amongst everybody else and causing mayhem and chaos on the roads. But let me start at the beginning. When I joined up with the city in 2010, I recall that after the first election, I think it was 2011, that was the first election, municipal election, for me, we started putting together what was then called TDA, the Transport Authority for the city. And it was looked at after a survey was done, looking at how people travel to places of work, places of entertainment, places of pleasure, places where they want to be. And we realized that people were spending almost 60% of their time and their salaries on transport. And what was then put together by, I always refer to them as our executive because it was those people that left and formed good. was looked at was how do we form a holistic transport system that work as one. And that negotiation started with Brett Herron. And it started in the sense that we then brought about that transport authority, looking at everything has to work into its work as one with each other. We looked at bicycle lanes, we looked at the train, the buses, the car, everything, looking at places where we could actually have no vehicle transport and maybe just have bicycle transport. And that type of discussion had happened at that point. So much so that Transnet or Prasa, whatever they want to call themselves, I've forgotten what they call themselves.
I think it's Prasa.
Prasa allowed the city and gave the city 20 million rand at the time to actually do the survey in terms of rail. And that survey was to fit in with what we'd already put on the table, which was the My City bus and the routes and how it worked. That negotiation, which Mitchell's Plain was the first one, so it wasn't just one department. You had VPUU, you had the German foundation that was funding it. So you had overseas investment that had the interest in it to look at how do we bring the communities together. It was it wasn't easy. Let me not say it was successful. It did not happen just by happenstance. It had its challenges, but eventually we got people to talk to one another. People were working together. They saw the bigger picture. When we left, and you will always hear me make the statement, when we left, they cancelled the transport authority. It didn't exist. But they carried on developing the My City route without that authority, without that negotiation, without that input from the societies that were supposed to be policing it. You cannot want to stand and be all things to all people. The people have to govern at some point, and you need to take them with you on this journey. Yes, that place was burnt down because I don't know. Let me not answer something that I don't know. But one can only think that the taxi association in that area most certainly wasn't brought on board. Mitchell's Plain, as we look at Mitchell's Plain, it's thriving, but we don't know.
Yeah, okay, no, I get that. I mean, your suggestion is that if people are not brought on board, obviously, they're fairly excluded from the process. I'm not sure that gives them the right to burn down buses, trains, and taxis. But unfortunately, with no law enforcement in our country, what can one do?
Correct.
But I take your point. I want to move on quickly now because we are just 5 minutes left. We've talked a lot about...
Only 5 minutes.
I know. Time flies when you're having fun.
Can we just make sure that we cover that question as well?
Oh, yes, sorry. Let's just have a look at this. Honourable Little, how was the increased electricity tariff determined by the city when you were still in council? How is it impacting on the poor? What can be done to alleviate this burden on the poor? And is it possible? What alternative can be implemented? There's a question for you. Can I ask you to deal with that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so the electricity increase at the moment is actually something that is extremely shocking. And I don't think that the people or the residents of Cape Town realize that they pay more electricity than the rest of the country. Again, I will say, so much for well run. What had happened is that in 2022, what we had picked up as good, we realized that the increased tariff was at 18.6 at that time. It's since reduced a bit, not much, but nurses' tariff was 12.6. And when we questioned why the increase, a whole lot of hogwash, things such as it was for the renewal of renewable energy, and then a whole lot of reasons, none of which has since been implemented. So the city of Cape Town had actually gone to court to challenge NERSA, because NERSA said to you, you cannot do what you're doing and you've got to go and you've got to apply the tariff that we have appointed for you or agreed to for the city of Cape Town. Well, the city said, no, they're not going to. They refused to, carried on with the increase and went to court. Now, they went to court with whose money? They went to court with your money. Same money that they're using on that carcade that you were talking about. Same money, our money. They went to court. They're still fighting the case. But what has happened since then? is that they've put another increase on. So
I
come
believe
first.
so, yes.
So come 1st of June. You're going to vote the
Going up
29th. Come 1st of June. You will be paying an increased tariff. And that is solely, this has got nothing to do with the ANC, this has got nothing to do with load shedding, this has got nothing to do with anybody that's in national government. This is purely the result of the city of Cape Town refusing. How does it impact the poor? Right now, we have an issue where the poor has got to make a decision between buying electricity and purchasing food because the tariff is so high, which means that when they start owing the city of Cape Town money, their debt is taken off their purchases of electricity.
What is the percentage? I hear what you're saying. What is the percentage that should? You're saying that the city of Cape Town is overcharging, and I'm aware of this story. I had one of the DA councillors in here, and it came up as well. So, what is the percentage? In other words, I'm trying to understand this from a layman's point of view. The Western Cape is now charging more than the rest of the country.
Correct.
And that money is going where exactly?
Well, the city of Cape Town has a savings account of 10 billion rand at the moment and increasing. Nobody knows what they're doing with that money. And that's public funds. One would have thought that they're using that money to uplift or to develop or to do something with. It's lying there. Based on that, they've just taken out another 2 billion rand loan when APAC told them, the auditing committee said to them, it's not necessary to take a loan, but they took a loan anyway. Who's paying back that loan? We're paying back that loan. So when we talk about things that's not so liquor, some of us want to call it corrupt, others call it irregular, but it is wrong. So now you sit with a situation where us, public, Joe Public, we've got to pay for that. The increase, the tariff that NERSA has told them to charge. I understand that we on-sell as a city and we must make a certain profit because we've got things to do. I appreciate that. And you can apply and make your case to NERSA as to that increase. But to raise it up at this point in time to 18% or 17% as it is at the moment is criminal. When you've been told to reduce it and you refuse, the people that's paying the price on that, however, is those people that actually cannot afford the tariff at the moment. Now, how does it impact them? The city's got a collection base, a collection process, where if you cannot pay your rates and your water and all of these, including fines, they will deduct it from your purchases, your electricity purchases. It's supposed to reflect on your municipal account, but I can guarantee you that many of the people that's listening today must go and have a look at their municipal bill and see whether or not the credits are reflected on their bill. You're not going to see it there. So where's the money going to? But they are collecting it. So when you purchase 50 or 100 rand, some people are getting 1 unit. The city is very proud of the fact that their bulk purchases has gone up. But the bulk purchases have gone up only on the Cape Flats because people have got to continuously purchase electricity. Now they're claiming that the increase was for to stop load shedding. But we get the same load shedding as the rest of the country. Why am I now paying for the privilege?
Well, we don't actually, because we've got the hydro scheme. So very often when the rest of the country is on 2, we're on 1.
Where?
We've got the hydroelectric scheme, which is out in Gordons Bay. And very often...
At the Steenbras,
yeah. So we're not always on the same level as the rest of the country.
On the same level.
But I don't want to digress from what you're saying.
No,
I'm
we
listening
are
to
on
what
the
you're
same
saying.
level.
And it's interesting how it's interesting that NERSA has put the price up again. Am I right? It's going up because you just said 1st of June. So what is going to happen then with this? We were already paying over, as you say, in the Western Cape for electricity. Now it's gone up again. I think it's gone up quite a lot, 18%. Can it be as much as that?
So what are we going to pay?
So that's what I'm asking you and where I'm trying to understand. So I can't see the benefit for the DA in doing this. If they're going to take this money and they're not going to spend it anywhere, if they are indeed taking it, where is it going? I mean, why would they take it?
It's a very good question.
No, I mean, I'm asking, it's a rhetorical question. I don't know.
I think it's a good question, and I think people should start asking that question. What exactly are they doing with it? Because load shedding hasn't stopped in the Western Cape. Load shedding continues in the Western Cape. It might be one in certain areas, but I most certainly experience it with the rest of the country. We haven't had it for a while. It was the Easter weekend, but please be assured, Easter weekend is over. It should be happening very soon. So what we are saying, if you look at the reason why we went to the minister to produce our own energy, is to get to that. We want investors. We know that we need to get our act together, and that is why we went to the minister to generate our own. But we didn't want it in the format that it is currently being explained and is being rolled out. And that is a debate for another day.
So, I've got one question. Yes.
No, I've got a personal question.
Oh.
So I've been watching the socials, right? And the NCC, they're on TikTok a lot, and they do their things, right? Personally, I feel that they're creating a division between black and colored people, but sometimes I feel that there's a reason for that, man. And one of the reasons was they went to this informal settlement, and there was free water given to that demographic of people. And then just over the road, they say that there's grandparents whose water's been put off, and they can't drink water. They can't drink their pills. They need water for the pills and stuff like that. Can you maybe give us like an indication as to why is that? Why is this cheese and chalk type of politics being played in the Western Cape?
You know, it's a difficult question to answer, because that is unfortunately the type of politics that is being played in the Western Cape. You have a situation where a tap is placed on a pavement, and that tap is being put there because in terms of the Constitution, when you have people living in informal settlement, you've got to provide water, you've got to provide sanitation, you've got to provide a certain amount of electricity. That is the norm. And so when you place a tap on a pavement, and nobody's taking responsibility for that tap, and they leave it running, it's a big difference to having a tap in your house where you're responsible for it. And they're quite correct that you have certain areas in informal settlements where the tap doesn't belong to anybody. The tap is broken. I can say the same in a place called Achterlaan, where a tap is put in. The tap serves a few families. Nobody's taken responsibility for that tap. And when that tap runs, it just runs openly, freely. And you can phone the city till you're blue in the face. It'll take a few days before they come and turn off that tap. So it is not so much a matter of coloured and black, but it is the situation that people find them in. And you are correct that there are people living in some houses where seniors have had their water turned off for 100 rand. But you have corporates in the CBD that owes 300-400 million rand, and nothing is being done. It's negotiated. And so you see the discrepancy not only in the fact or the way that they deal with water, but the way that they deal with services, the way they deal with what is due to people living on the other side of the M5. It is the situation that we find ourselves in terms of how the development has taken place. And that is something else that we need to talk about, how we've been developed over these years. In actual fact, we've not seen development in the city of Cape Town or in the province or in the country. What we've actually seen is a kind of band-aid approach to the situation that we find ourselves in 30 years. Have you seen a city being developed over this 30 years? Have you seen the redevelopment of the city in the 30 years? Mannenberg is still Mannenberg. Hanover Park is still Hanover Park. Yet, when we were at in the position of government, and I'm very careful how I use my words as to where I was, because I don't want to give people credit, because it wasn't their work, it was our work. It was decided at that point that we must have a redevelopment of these ghettos. We cannot live in the situation where ghettos have been built for 5,000 families. There's now 25, almost 50,000 people living in a situation. Infrastructure hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. The schools haven't changed. We have a system in this country, where in this province, where the Minister of Health, the MEC of Health says, oh my goodness, the health system has failed. But you're the MEC. How do you stand here and say to me, oh my goodness, the health system has changed, has failed? It failed under your watch.
It's almost as if they weren't around.
They weren't part of it.
No, I wasn't around then, but now we've taken over. It's failed. No, well, you were running it for the last 10 years.
We are facing a situation at this point, as I'm sitting here. The MEC or the Education Department has given letters, and I'm still trying to find out what this is all about, that they've issued letters to teachers that have fired them. We are sitting with a growing community. We are sitting with a growing city. We're sitting with a growing province. We need each and every teacher we can find. But this education department decides to fire teachers. Of the people that must be employed, we firing teachers. I just don't understand it. You're in government for the people. You've got a growth of young people.
So you are talking local here, you're talking MEC.
I'm not only talking local.
National?
You see, people must understand, let me just explain something to you, Mike. People must understand how government works. National government in its entirety makes certain rules and situations and policies and acts and rules and divides the money in terms of the provinces where they govern. The province has an oversight in terms of implementing that. But the ground...
On national policy. Yeah.
On national policy.
Yeah.
When it gets to local, it's not a different set of rules. It's the same set of rules. But on local government, it's where it's implemented, because local government's where the people are.
Yeah, okay.
But your province has an oversight over those municipalities to ensure that they actually carry out. So your MEC cannot stand one side and say, oh my goodness, it's local government. National
but my point is that I was thought you were talking national government, but local government, I've got a dear friend of mine who's just been admitted to Caucus Hospital for a heart issue. I tell you, if he was any other hospital in the country, he'd be a dead man. He is getting outstanding care in that hospital. And that hospital is running, Caucus, the best run hospital in the country. And I said, you are in good hands. You are in good hands there. But if he was to be in a hospital in Joburg, his chances of survival will be very slim.
If he was in a hospital in Atlantis, his chances would have been very slim.
That might be the case. I can only speak for Caucus. But now I have look at this clock. It's ticking along here, and we really do need to have to close off the show, which is a pity because there's never enough time, as I always say, and there isn't. I want to ask you just one more question. And then you can also just round up as well as to where we are with the Good Party, and tell us, if you like, why you feel we should vote for you. The election is coming up on the 29th of May. And one thing that concerns me, and this is just a personal observation, is I'm a bit of a fan of Patricia. Now, I'm going to get my head bitten off this, but I've always admired her from the day that she exposed the arms deal. And she's always, I knew her once or twice through a charity, so I know on a personal level as well that I dealt with, and she was a supporter, and so I've got a lot of time for her. But I am concerned about the fact that she's in the nest with a nest of vipers. She's in the middle of a camp of criminals. Now, how safe is my vote going to be if I give it to the Good Party? Because I am concerned that vote might one day be absorbed by the ANC, and that keeps me awake at night. So what kind of guarantee can you give the voters that if they vote for the Good Party, and I can see lots of good reasons why they should, are they going to stay with the Good Party, or are they going to wake up one day and find that they're suddenly part of the ANC?
I can assure you that they're not going to be part of the ANC. We've not signed any coalition with anybody. We are an independent party. We stand on our own with our own manifesto, with our own set of beliefs, with our own set of focused areas, goals, and focus areas. I think I can explain it this way. A lot of people are saying to us, but Patricia's a minister. As far as I am aware, and know, that has been a tradition started by Madiba. We had opposition parties in his cabinet. We cannot talk about the Zuma era because that was a totally different type of government. It is being reintroduced. It doesn't mean that Patricia will get that seat again or the Good Party will get that seat again. We don't know. We hope, but we don't know. It will be determined after the 29th. But let me say this. We haven't got... Patricia operates as an independent leader of her own party, implementing her own focus areas and policies. That was very clear when she went in as the Minister of Public Works, and she had so many people arrested in her directorate to make it function. The same thing happened when she went in as the Minister of Tourism, when she could stop that R1 billion from actually being paid out. That is taxpayers' money. She acted as the leader of good and not as a collaborator or as a coalition partner. It is not that. But let me also say, people always refer to the fact that she went to the DA, and I think that is what's always on people's mind. Will she do the same thing? It's a very bitter lesson to learn, to think that when you speak coalition, and maybe this is a very good lesson for those that have signed this, I call it a moonshine deal, because it's a moonshine, it's a moonshot, whatever it's called. They must be very clear. You see, I like moonshine. Moonshine, at least you get the benefit out of it. Moonshine. Because you must never forget what they've done to others. You see, Patricia, and I always explain this to people, if you read Patricia and you listen to her as a unionist, her passion, her drive to change the lives of the people she served, and you read our manifesto, you will notice her focus has never changed. Over all of this years, she has stayed steadfast in developing that. When the opportunity for the DA came, she saw that opportunity to actually bring about that change. And that was promised. And so between 2011 and 2016, you would have seen the DA didn't do much with Patricia. They were over the moon in having her there. Patricia had carte blanche. But the minute they realized that Patricia was actually becoming more important than what they were and was actually getting things done, Patricia became a problem.
So bottom line, my vote is not going to go to the ANC.
Your vote is safe.
Thank you.
Your vote is safe. And she is the only person. Have a look at all the political parties that is able to implement. You see, politics is about implementation. It's not about what is written here. We are going to see manifestos across the board. But look at who can implement, and Patricia is the only one.
Let me ask you another question that I find fascinating, and now I'm off script, and I'm breaking my own rules now. But you mentioned that you hope that the cabinet seat is maintained. You said that you do hope that she retains her position as minister. Now, just from where I'm sitting, I would have thought, in actual fact, it must be a burden, because she's trying to run a political party which surely must, requires 100% attention. And now she's working in with the ANC. Would it not be better? I can't see the advantage to the Good Party of her being in cabinet with the ANC at the same time running a party like Good Party, which, is not a small operation. This is a big party, and it's starting to get some traction. Surely she would be wanting to spend... So where's the benefit for her to sit in Parliament?
Okay, I'm going to answer you two ways. First of all, you're assuming that the rest of the executive doesn't have the capacity, but that's just me off the record.
I'm not assuming that. It's about leadership, and I'm certainly not assuming that for a second. I'm just saying that as a businessman, if you're going to make a business success, you need to be there, eat, sleep, and dream that business. And I don't think politics is any different.
You're correct. But she is eating, sleeping, and dreaming politics, because when she's sitting there, she's representing good. The work that she's done was for good. The work that she's done in tourism, by increasing the amount of employment and job opportunities, was for good. She's done it as the good leader. That benefit comes to us. For Patricia, as the leader of the Good Party, to turn around a directorate or a ministry such as Public Works, that is in our favor, to prove to the people of this country that we can govern. We are not talking about governing, we are governing. And for Patricia, in that nest, to stay focused and do what she must do to bring about change, proves that she has the capacity to actually make the change in this country. It is the one leader that is not consumed or taken in or being sidelined by all of this nonsense that you see. This is a woman that is focused on the change that must be brought in South Africa, so that we have a legacy for our children. Not just yours, not just mine, for all of us. And she has proven time and time again that she has that capacity as the leader of good, because what she's done in Parliament was as the leader of good, and that comes to our credit that we have that capacity.
Suzette, thank you so much. It's been a fascinating conversation.
It's my pleasure.
I have really enjoyed it. I love your courage. I love the fact that you're so passionate, and I really do think you must be a credit to the Good Party. So well done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for coming along, answering all the questions, and I wish you all the best going forward. The 29th of May is just around the corner, and I remember begging people to please go and register to vote. If you didn't register to vote and now you're impressed with the Good Party, bad luck to you, because now you can't vote for them. But those that you did, I want to say thanks very much. Well done, and I will look forward to seeing you voting, and we hopefully will get together after the 29th.
Yes.
That'll be fascinating to see where we all are in this country of ours. And let me just say two things in conclusion. I want to first of all just thank Cape Conscious Media. I want to just thank all the people, the viewers. Thanks very much for those that contributed to the show. That was really a pleasant surprise, and please do leave some comments, any thoughts, good or bad, at the bottom of the page on our Facebook page. I'd love the feedback. I really appreciate it. And any suggestions you might want to make the show more interesting and more exciting, I will be glad to read and listen to them and act on them. I want to just end the show by quoting Martin Luther King. And he said, "No work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity." And I think it's well worth thinking about that, because that's really where we are in South Africa. We need work. All work has dignity, whether it's making toothpicks, pencils, rubbers, or motor cars. And then let me just finally say, because I love this lady, Katla Hongwaki, she is a podcaster who is making a difference in our country. She has a show called A Citizen Concerned. I recommend her show highly. And she always concludes her show by saying, "Please beware of the comrades." So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for tuning in, and look forward to chatting to you soon. Suzette, thank you
Thank
very
you
much
so
for
much
coming
for
on.
having me.